Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So inshallah today we will we'll pick up where we left off in the book Mutn Abu Shujaa wa Taqrib. And this the last chapter or the last section that we went over, which is the Kitab al-Salah. So this was, we finished this and we finished it off by talking about the janazah process and how people go about when someone passes away. What is the process for taking care of their body and making sure that they get buried properly and these things. And also because there's salah in there, that's part of the reason why that gets put at the end of the Kitab al-Salah, because this is a type of salah that needs to be done. And so the next major section is the zakah. And also, if we remember that the Prophet ﷺ, he said in the famous hadith, Bunya al-Islamu ala khams, he says Islam is built on 5. And then he says that the first one, which is a shahada, an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and that the first one is that there's the shahada, which is like what we talk about in Aqidah, and then the second one, which is wa iqamis salah. And so then this is the establishing of the prayer. And so we talked about this. This was the first 2 major chapters. So we talked about purity and also salah. And this was the first of that too, because purity is a prerequisite for salah. So this is how that one plays in. And then he says after that, wa ita is zakah. And this is the third one of the 5 pillars. And this is the next major chapter that we go into here when we are discussing fiqh. And a lot of the books of fiqh, they're usually based upon, like, they take these first 5 things that the Prophet ﷺ said that Islam is built upon, and they go off of these, and then after that, then they go into the rest of the other areas of fiqh after these. But they usually put the ibadat first, because this is, of course, important for our relationship with Allah, is the first and foremost. And then after that, we have a relationship with the people around us and making sure that we're dealing with them in the proper way with it, whether it's in relation to our family, like the family relations, or whether it's in relation to our business transactions. All of these, they need to be done with equity and with justice. And so those are the things that will come after this. And so he talks here and he says Kitab al-Zakah, rahimahullah. So he basically says for the Kitab al-Zakah, and the concept of zakah, what it means in Arabic is like growth, and it also means purity. So the zakah, it has the meaning of growth if something like is growing, yazku, if it's something that grew and it increased in its number, but it also has the meaning of purifying. And so this is also another meaning for this word zakah. So it's one, it's growth, and one, it's purifying. If we look at the meaning of when we're giving out in zakah, this is a means for our wealth to grow, and it's also a means for it to be purified. And this is mentioned in the ayah that Allah says, "Khudh min amwalihim sadaqatan tutahhiruhum wa tuzakkihim biha." And so that Allah says to the Prophet ﷺ to take from their wealth sadaqah, which is talking about zakah here, and tutahhirukum wa tuzakkihim biha. And so, like, this is the reason for this is something that will purify him, tutahhiruhum. This is tatir for that person's wealth, wa tuzakkihim biha. And this is also like another type of purification, or you could say like maybe this is like a growth with that. And so this is of the linguistic meanings of zakah. And there's definitely there's a lot of benefits for zakah that come about. And of these benefits is that, one, it brings the community together. Of course, if you have like a community, you have a bunch of people in the community, but no one's giving back and forth to each other, and you have people that are in need, this is something that can cause hardship within the community. But when the people are coming and they're helping each other, this makes sure that there's no one left out from like the poor people. There's no like poor people that are left feeling that they are not getting anything from the community, even if maybe they're benefiting in some way, but they need help. And so this is a way that it brings the community together, and they bring the excess wealth from the rich to give it to the poor. And this is something that the Prophet ﷺ, he talks about when he talks about that it's to be given for the that the after the first things that he was telling us for Islam, and he told Mu'adh when we sent him out to Yemen, he says to tell them that Allah made like first it was like call them to la ilaha illallah, and then to call them to establish the salah. If they obey you in this, then they call them to establish the salah, and if they obey you in this, then inform them that Allah has made sadaqah obligatory on them, like the zakat obligatory on them, and that it's to be taken from their wealthy and given on the poor, fuqara'ihim, faturaddu ala fuqara'ihim, and so then it's to be given to their poor. And so also from this hadith we can get the fact that this is to be given to the people of that land. Like, of course we understand, like, some of the money, if we were to give our zakat in America and we gave it to people that are in, like, say whether it's in like in the in Gaza or some of the other places around here that are like in the very poor nations and people that need help. Yes, we understand that that money will buy a lot more for that person. But also a lot of the scholars, they say the money is supposed to be around the community that it's in. So like sending your zakat overseas, it's better for you to make sure everyone inside of your community has been taken care of with their zakat. There's no outstanding debts for people that are in the community and whatnot. We'll talk about who the people that get paid for later. But of course, the first and foremost are the people that are immediately around that person. Of course, besides the family. But this is a way to bring the community together. And when we take care of the people that are around us, this brings that community together and makes them tight-knit. And also make sure that the ummah in general prospers. When somebody gives out their zakah, then they will find blessing in this. And one of the main things is that can hold up blessing and also the economy in general is when people stash away money and they don't do anything with this money, but rather they just stash it away and it's not doing anything. It's just sitting in a bank somewhere, and this money is not going into the economy. It's not trading. It's not going into business with that. And economically, when money is moving, money is the whole economy is more prosperous when money is moving. But when it gets stashed away and hoarded, then this is like a problematic thing, and it creates a stagnance in the economy as well as within the people. And so this is the money that's stashed and hoarded. This is the money where zakat goes from. And so we'll talk about that, but this is of the main thing. So if somebody has money that's they got a whole big amount in the bank and whatnot, this is that money that's being targeted here with the zakat. It's not the every single bit of money that comes into someone's hands, but rather it's the one that he's not using for a while and then he's stashed away. This is where it comes in. And of course, this encourages buying, selling, and trading and this. And also when someone is giving, this increases the movement of that. And so this is something that's a way for the ummah to prosper. And when the ummah, if the ummah was to give their zakat properly, there would be a lack of poor people. And at the time of the Khalifa Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, rahmatullahi alayhi, when he was the Khalifa, there was a time where there was so much prosperity, and he was one of the most just and noble rulers that Islam has known after the first for the Khalifa. From that, so he was known for his justice. And then at this time, when they would give out their zakah, there would be nobody left to take it. There would be no poor people. There would be no one that is going to do that. So they would just put their zakat on a tree and just wait for someone to take it. They were just hoping that somebody would take the zakat, because there was no room for even someone to take the zakat, which is very amazing when you think about that. And so also so this is of the benefits of somebody that goes and gives their zakah, that it keeps that thing moving, and also gives the giver a chance to make it a normal habit. Like when they're giving out, this is something that they don't get in the habit of not giving, but rather they know, I always need to give out my zakah. And if they're giving out, then they have this kind of establishment of giving that is in them at least, and this is something that can encourage them to do more, to give even more than what they have already given. And also this is this is it puts aside some of the envy that others would see, and like diseases in the heart when somebody sees someone that's rich and they look at them as if that's never going to come to them. But if they know that this person is like this wealthy person is giving his zakah, then he knows from the fact that he's giving his zakah that this will eventually come like there will be something that comes his way, or if everyone's doing their part. And of course, this is something that's good, and it will get rid of like the envy that someone has. And if you think about some of the richest people in the world, if you did the math on their wealth and their zakah, how much they would be paying, like this would be immense. Like it's 2.5%. And if you look at like some of like Jeff Bezos or some of these people that are like just ridiculously rich, what is 2.5% of their money going to the poor? What would this do? Like this would make a huge difference in the economy, and it would make a huge difference in like the rest of the world and whatnot. So of course, this is something that we could see that Islam has given us the tools for everyone to be prosperous. And these are some of the benefits. And inshallah, we'll get started with the actual rulings regarding it. And so he says here, Kitab al-Zakah, أن تجب الزكاة في 5 أشياء وهي المواشي والأثمان والزروع والثمار وعروض التجارة. And so he says here that zakah is obligatory for 5 things. And this is only obligatory for these 5 things. Anything outside of this is not where zakah is obligatory as far as this ruling here. So he says the first thing that's obligatory is for livestock. And he says mawashi, and this is livestock. He'll talk about what type of livestock, because it's not all livestock. There's only a certain types here. And then also for currency, he says athman, and this is thaman is like currency, or like a price that you would pay for something, or athman, and this is for currency. And what he means here is like by gold and silver. But of course, we would take this with our any type of currency that we use these days, whether it's the fiat currencies and whatnot. This all falls under that. And then also he says what zurur and what thimar. And so he says crops, and this crops is a certain type. We'll talk about what types of crops. It's not all crops, but it's the certain types that are stored, as well as what thimar, which is fruits. And it's not all fruits, but rather it's we'll talk about it, but it's grapes and dates. And grapes and dates, these are the two that are from the fruits. And then the 5th one is goods for sales or trade. So if someone bought something and they're trying to trade, and they bought it with the intention to trade, then this thing, if a year goes on it and it has the certain amount we'll talk about, then this also has zakat in it. Someone has a store and they're selling things in their store, the things in their store, they need to make sure they have inventory on it so that they know when they give zakat for that. For like the things that are in their store and whatnot. So they need to make sure that they're aware of this as well. So anyone who's buying and selling and trading, they need to be aware that there's zakat on their goods that they're buying and selling and trading. And so he's going to go into each one of these and go into detail, and so there's going to be some of these that aren't such as the livestock, and also some of the farming, depending on depending if you do have questions or you need like extra things, then feel free to ask about them. But I'm not going to go super into detail with some of them, just because of the amount of time it will take. But he basically says here, أما المواشي فتجب الزكاة في 3 أجناس منها وهي الإبل والبقر والغنم. And so he says here that as for livestock, it's obligatory for 3 types. He says the first one, so it's only obligatory for these 3 types. So if you have livestock, it's only for these 3. It's 1, it's camels. 2, it's cattle. So this is like the cows. And then 3, it's ghanam. And ghanam is a word in Arabic that encompasses sheep and it encompasses goats. So ghanam is both of these. So it could be sheep and goats. So all of these are the ones that zakah would be on them. And of course, we'll talk about the level that it comes into in the next section. Now he's going to talk about the conditions for it to be obligatory. When does it become obligatory? And so he says here, وَشُرَائِطُ وُجُوبِهَا 6 أشياء. And so he says there's 6 conditions for it to be obligatory. The first one, al-Islam, wal-Hurriya, wal-Milk al-Tam, wal-Nisab, wal-Hawl, was-Sawm. Bisin. And so he says here, the first one, which is Islam. So the person needs to be Muslim. This is the first thing that makes it obligatory. Of course, the non-Muslim, he is supposed to give zakah, but like he's not called to give zakah until he becomes a Muslim, and then everything is forgiven from before. But if he were to die in that state, he would be punished for not giving zakah. And this is like the meaning of it. But Islam is something that, of course, this is one of the one of the things that makes it obligatory, of course. And then he also says wal hurriya, and this is freedom. So like the person is a free person and not a slave or something. And then also wal milkut tam. So he needs to own this livestock. He needs to own it completely. He can't be like loaned this livestock. So if he's like someone's loaning him the livestock or something, or if he's borrowing it from somebody for some good or something, or it's not his livestock but it's someone else, then in this case he doesn't own it completely. So unless he has that complete ownership of it, it's not something that is that the zakah would be obligatory for him. And remember this concept because it'll come up in the next ones. And so, and then also the nisab. And nisab is a word that means basically the amount that's reached. Like there's a certain amount for each one of these like types of wealth, that when you reach that amount, then this amount is the threshold. After that, zakah is obligatory. Before that, zakah is not obligatory. So once the nisab is reached, that's why it's called like that amount is reached. Then this is when the zakah would become obligatory on that person. But if he's under it, then it's not obligatory for him. And then also in the completion of 1 year. So 1 year needs to be completed while he's above this nisab. So when he gets the goods and whatnot, so when he has these animals and whatnot, if he has them for over a year and he has this nisab, like this amount that is this threshold that is he's above, then in this case it becomes obligatory. But if it's less than a year, then it's not obligatory. And also a very key point that someone should be mindful of is that this year here is a Hijri year. So this is a lunar year. So we're going off of the Islamic calendar. We're not going off of the Gregorian calendar when we talk about 1 year. And also this is with everything that you'll find in like the Sharia. If we ever talk about a year, or we talk about 15 years old, or any of this, all of this is talking about the lunar calendar, not the solar calendar. And so this is so 1 year has passed. And also it says was Saum. And Saum is not Saum with a Sad, but it's with a Sin. And this means grazing, that these animals are free grazing. If they're fed by feed, so someone gives them feed and whatnot, and that feed is something that they're actually living off of, like that they're actually, if they were not to have that, then they wouldn't be able to live properly. Then in this case they would be considered non-grazing, even if they do graze occasionally. But we look at like, are they able to live without it, or do they have or are they completely dependent on the feed itself and whatnot? So we look at that, and if they are free grazing in the pastures and whatnot, then in this case, if that's where they get their sustenance from, like the majority of it, then in this case there would be zakah on them if all of these conditions are met. And so these are basically the conditions that are for the livestock. And like, of course, there's a little more details that will come here and there. As of course, the nisab will have its own chapter. He's going to come afterwards, and he's going to talk about what are the levels for when this nisab is hit, and he'll talk about the nisab for each one of these. And so the next one he's going to talk about, and this is something, and make sure that we're paying attention here. As for currency, he's going to talk about currency here, and this is what mostly involves us. And so he says, وَأَمَّا الْأَثْمَانُ فَشَيْئَانِ الذَّهَبُ وَالْفِضَّةُ. And so he says here, as far as the athman, which are the like currency, he says then there's two of them. There's two types, gold and silver. And in the silver here, the gold and silver, we'll talk about the amount of it. But if you do have one of these or two of these, if you have over that amount, and it's with you for more than a year, as we'll talk about these currencies, then there's zakah on it. And like that is also the currency that we would have, whether it's dollars or euros or any other types of foreign currency. All of these currencies, if it's a currency and whatnot, this is something that also has zakah on it. Even like Bitcoin and whatnot, this is a currency, and there would also be zakah on it. And so he gives the two, which of course these two that he says of two types of gold and silver. This is like typically in that time, this was something that it was unheard of to basically have some type of fiat currency, but so this was the thing that was mostly used. But it's the gold and the silver, and of course we'll talk about there's a little exception for like jewelry that is permissible, like for a woman, and so. He gives the conditions for this, and the conditions for it to be obligatory. He says, وَشَرَائِطُ وُجُوبِ الزَّكَاةِ فِيهَا خَمْسَةُ أَشْيَاء. So he says the conditions for it to be obligatory are, there's 5 conditions for it to be obligatory. And so he says here, al-Islam, and so of course the person is Muslim. He says also al-Hurriya, wal-Hurriya, which is the freedom, that this person is a free person, wal-Milku التام, and that the complete ownership, that this person owns it completely, wal nisabu wal hawl, and the nisab and the completion of 1 year. Wal hawl is a completion of 1 year. And so these are the 5 conditions. If these are met, then in this case, then the zakah is obligatory on the money that someone has. And when it comes to say this person is a Muslim, but they're not of age, like they haven't become like to the age of accountability. The money that they have, say that they have a money that is like in a trust or something for them, or they have received inheritance before and whatnot, and it's like waiting there, this money has zakah in it, because the zakah is looking at the money. It's not necessarily looking at the person that's there. This is a bunch of money, and like looking at the money itself, this is where the zakah comes in. We don't have any like clear evidence that the zakah is not taken from like the younger, from like kids they're still young. And of this, we actually do have evidence that the Prophet ﷺ, he ordered people to use to use the money that is there and make sure that it's not sitting there and getting eaten by zakah. In a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ and that he said, don't let zakah eat this person's inheritance. And so by understanding this, we understand that zakah would eat it, and so this is something that it would be obligatory on it, and it is obligatory if there's an amount of money there that zakah is paid from the money of someone's, like if someone has a trust set up for them, they have money in their kid, the zakah is still obligatory on the money itself. We're not looking at the age of the kid. We're looking, the kid is Muslim. This is Muslim money. Then this Muslim money that is here, it has this zakah on it. And so this is important to understand. Also, so this is one of the things that, and even if the person was insane, say they're not a kid, but they're insane, but they have a trust fund set up for them, this still has zakah that would come from it. Because these are not from the conditions, and we're looking at the money. The money is the key part here. This is money that it belongs to a Muslim, and this money that belongs to a Muslim that is free and that completely owns this money, then this is something that has zakah on it. And also when he talks about the nisab, we'll talk about this in the later chapters, but in general it's 80 grams of gold. So 80 grams of gold, whatever this means, then this is the nisab amount outside of that. So if anyone has over 80 grams of gold, or they have this amount in dollars and whatnot that's saved, and it's with them for a whole year. So if it needs to be above this level the whole year. So if it dips down below that, and then they come back up later, it starts when they come back up. This is the beginning of the year now. So if they dip behind that, say they had like, what is it, like around $6,000 probably, or it's like I think it's probably around $5,000, 80 grams of gold. I think it's around $5,000 roughly. But if it, say they had like $5,000, then they had like something that happened, they had to pay for a car accident or something, and so then they went below this and they only had like $3,000 or $2,000 in the bank, and then they came back up. As soon as they come back up, this is where the nisab would start up. Once they came up above that threshold, then this is the start of the year. And then if a whole year comes about this and they haven't fallen under this, at the end of that year, this is when they give the zakat on what is there, and what is left. And so this is how we look at that nisab. And of course, anytime that we go under it, then it restarts. And of course, no one should ever be playing with their money. And this is something that like that is it's a very serious issue. If someone is like, they don't want to give zakat on their money, so they do like tricks with other people. They're like, okay, here, I'm going to give you my money, that gives them under the zakah, and they're going to give them their money afterwards, and then they switch money, and they say, okay, we went under the zakat. This is playing around, and Allah knows exactly what this kind of funny business is, and this is something that is haram for someone to play around and try to like cheat their way out of zakah. Of course, this is that Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَها فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَبَشِّرْهُم بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. That Allah says, and the people that they hoard their gold and their silver, and they don't give it in the way of Allah, then give them news of a terrible punishment, and so like of a very painful punishment. So of course this tafsir of this ayah is that this is talking about the zakah, and for the people that don't do that. And of course this is a very serious sin for someone not to give zakah. And the Prophet ﷺ, he talks about that there on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah, that is the day where it's like that day is like 50,000 years. The people that don't give their zakah, their zakah will come to them, like the zakah will come to them in the form of a snake, and like in a viper, and will like attack them and whatnot. And also there's zakah, like if it was like from camels and whatnot, it will come back and forth and trample over them on this day that is like 50,000 years, and it will come back over and trample them. And this is a very like grievous punishment for the people that don't pay their zakah. It's a very serious thing, and this is on the Yawm al-Qiyamah. This is the rights of the people. Like, so this zakah that is not given, it's not like you're doing something that is just haram between you and Allah. This is not like something that's just between you and Allah. This is between the rights of the people that were supposed to get that money. And so like this is their rights. And so this is something that has to be like, it has to be taken care of. And so this is of course a very, very serious thing for someone to hold back their zakah. And so this is of the severity of this. And there's many hadith that talk about this, about the punishment of those that hold back their zakah and they don't give it out. And of course this is a very serious sin, and this is of the 5 pillars of Islam. And so this is a very like even more essential thing for someone to make sure that they're holding up their Islam, like in like that bare minimum standard of what is Islam. Islam is like, and giving the zakah is one of the major pillars of that. And so this is the meaning of this. And the completion of the 1 year, as I mentioned, is the Hijri year. This is the Hijri year, and this year starts when when they have reached that level. If they want to give their, like say their zakah, they want to give it early, they can give their zakah early. But they need to understand, like if they are, when the year actually finishes, if they have more than the zakah that they gave, then they need to give the rest of the zakat at this point. So say they gave zakat in like $10,000. They had $10,000 with them at the time, and they gave it a couple months early. And so some people, they give their zakat in Ramadan. And this is like something that people do. And some scholars have said the zakat is on the time when it comes out. And like giving sadaqah on Ramadan is good to do. And so like if zakah is going to take the place of this, then this is not good. Like you should be giving sadaqah for Ramadan, and then you give your zakah in its normal appointed time, that once your year has finished. But some people, they do this. So if they were to give their zakah early, and then after it they come up, and when the time actually comes from their year, when their year finishes, if they have more than what they give zakah on, then they need to finish off their zakah. So they need to give the rest of whatever that zakah was. Say they got $5,000 more than that, or they got an extra a big bump and they got like $50,000. Then their zakah is lacking. They need to fill up the rest of that zakah from that year. And so this is important. So yes, you can give it early, but you also need to make sure that you give that you like, if you're over it when the year actually finishes, that you give the rest of it. And if you're under, then this is something, of course, like if it was in a Islamic society where you have the ability to tell them, I'm giving this early, then you can ask them, oh, I have less than this for my zakah, and then you can ask them to return some of it. And of course, this is looking into into the way that someone does this, of course. And if there's an ability to do this, then you'd have to be clear with that in the beginning. for like returning the zakah if you were to give it early, but it is permissible to give it early. And so the next thing he's going to talk about, because we talked about there's different types of things that have zakah, so he's going to talk about crops, and he says وَأَمَّا الزُّرُوعُ فَتَجِبُ الزَّكَاةُ فِيهَا بِثَلَاثِ شَرَائِطَ. And so he says that as far as the for crops, zakah is obligatory if 3 conditions are met. And so he says here, أن يكون مما يزرعه الآدميون. And so this is the first one, which is something that humans farm. And instead in the next one he says فَتَجِبُ وَأَن يَكُونَ نِصَابًا, and then that it reaches the actual nisab. Or he says here, I missed something here, وَأَن يَكُونَ قُوتًا مُدَّخِرًا, and that it is a staple food that can be stored and lived off of, and that it reaches the nisab. And then he gives the nisab here, which is خمسة أوسق لا كشر عليها, and that this is 5 awsuq whole, like there's no like shells on it, or like if you had like rice or something, you take off the hull is what I think they would say, it's like a hull, but you take off the shell that would be on top of the grains and whatnot. And so he says here that the conditions for this is that this is something that humans farm. So if this is like a wild plant that people they get benefit from, if it grows by itself and it's not something that is farmed by humans, then there's no zakat on this. And it's also something that needs to be qut. And qut is like a type of a staple food that is something that someone would live off of, like something that is like normal. So if you had like beans is like this corn, like that corn that actually is not the sweet corn, but it's like the other type of corn that is like that you would make flour out of and whatnot. And this is something that someone would live off of, and also things that it needs to be stored as well. And so also like of course grains, and most part almost all the grains, they would fall into this category where there's something that we eat and something that's grown by like we actually have it, like we actually have to grow it ourselves and like farm it. And so also we have like wheat and rice and barley, all of these different types of grains here, and oats. These are all things that are stored, and that they're foods that we can live off of, and that they're like staple foods and whatnot. Then in this case, if it reaches the nisab, which is that level, then this is when it would become obligatory. And he says here that it's 5 awsuq, and the awsuq is a certain type of volumetric measurement. So it's not actually you can't give it like a kilo measurement. You would actually give it something that is volumetric, and of course this is something that I don't have the actual like the volumetric measurement with me right now, but this is something that if you do need it, it is a large amount. Like 5 awsuq is a large amount. And this is the way, if it was over that, then this would be obligatory in it. And so these are the three things when it comes to zuru, and this is for the crops, and also for fruit. He says here, وَأَمَّا الثِّمَارُ فَتَجِبُ الزَّكَاةُ فِي شَيْئَيْنِ مِنْهَا ثَمَرَةُ النَّخْلِ وَثَمَرَةُ الْكَرْمِ. And so he says that as far as the fruits, it's only obligatory in 2 things. And so these are either dates or grapes. These are the 2 that are that it would be obligatory for. And the basis in this, of course, why is it not obligatory in like apples or other things? The basis in this is that it's only obligatory in what is made, what we have evidence for it to be obligatory. We don't say that anything is obligatory unless we have evidence to show that it's obligatory. So the same thing goes for like honey. So like we don't say that there's something in honey unless there was authentic evidence that came to us that there's zakah in honey. And so this is the same with all of the other animals and whatnot. So like we talked about animals before, but if we had something other than a camel, we have a llama, and we have a whole herd of llamas. Is there zakah in this whole herd of llamas? There's no zakah in the herd of llamas unless we're doing unless we're trading them and we bought it with the intent to trade. Then in this case it would be trading goods that we would do that zakah for trading goods. But like if we just have other animals and whatnot that aren't of that type, we only go with the type that is narrated. We don't go outside of that. when it comes to these types. So we only say that this is the view of the Shafi'i madhab here, that they say only dates and grapes are the ones that have zakat in them. And if they, of course, and these are the four conditions that he says here. It says وَشُرَعْتُ وُجُوبُ الزَّكَاةِ فِيهَا أَرْبَعَةُ أَشْيَاء, that there's four conditions for it to become obligatory. Al-Islam, when we talked about this, which is that the person's Muslim. Al-Hurriya, the person's free. The third one, which is Al-Milk Tam, that he owns this completely. And so it's not something that he doesn't, that is not his ownership. And also the Nisab. And also that he owns it to the certain level of that. And the nisab is the same as we mentioned before. That's khamsatu awsuq, which is this certain volumetric measurement here. That is a certain amount. And so this is when it comes to the thimar. And of course the time for the zira and the thimar, when does the time come for this? As he didn't mention that hawl here. Like he didn't mention that this needs to be 1 year. The time for this is when the crop is harvested. Then it becomes obligatory to pay the zakat on it once it becomes harvested. And so this is, say if you have like grapes, or if you have dates and whatnot, you would give the zakat. And you would give the zakat and the form from it. You would give it in its like dried form. So you have like the dried dates, or you would have like raisins and whatnot that you would give out from it. You wouldn't give it out as fruit. And so like you would take the measurement. You would have someone that is good with this. They would look at the crop, and they would say, this amount of like this harvest that you have, this amount would roughly equate to this amount of dates that are dried. And then you would take that and you would do the math on that, and then this is what's obligatory on you. Once it dries, then you would give it out for that, and it becomes obligatory from the time that it was harvested. And so this is the way that the time that would be harvested is like that. And of course, if there's this is connected with the harvest itself, and is not connected with the year coming around, the cycle. And so. Then the last thing that he's going to talk about here, as far as the types that he mentioned, he says, وَأَمَّا عُرُوضُ التِّجَارَةِ فَتَجِبُ الزَّكَاةُ فِيهَا بِشَرَائِطِ الْمَذْكُورَةِ فِي الْأَثْمَانِ. And so he says, and as for the goods for trade, then they have the same conditions as currency. So the goods for trade, as we mentioned before, that there's five conditions for currency, which is of course the person's Muslim. They have their freedom. They own the goods that they're selling, like that these are actually their goods that they're selling, and that they have reached the nisab. And that nisab is the amount. You would take the amount that these goods are. Do they equate to the amount that if they were gold? Does it equate to the same amount, that would be over the nisab? And then you would look at this, and if it does, then there's, of course, it would make that, and also the completion of 1 year. So if someone's doing tijara, sometimes they'll be trading from one thing to another and going back and forth and whatnot. You would take it from the beginning of the year, and then at the end of the year you would look, did they actually, like, are they still up there? And of course there's different ways to look at it. Some of the scholars said we'd look at the beginning and the end, and if anything that it dipped in the middle, we wouldn't look at this for like the trading, because sometimes someone they will pay out, they'll cash out, and then they'll buy something right away with the money that they just have. And so like this is, yes, maybe the goods that they had went under the nisab, but they just got the money for it and then they bought more. And so do we say this starts here and then it stops, or do we say this is all together? And like the safer thing, of course, is to start at the beginning of that and then look at the end and like forget what's in the middle, and like see, like, did it dip under that when I sold a product that was big, and then I got my money from it, and then I bought another product with that. Then this time when I got this money, does this actually cancel the year and start it from the time I get the next one, or not? And so this is a tricky issue, but the safer of them, and the one that like my Sheikh Ahmed Makrami, that he says, is that it would be, you would start at the beginning and go at the end. Like in this time, if it dips in there with that, then that would not be there. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And so this is important for someone when they're doing their sales, that they make sure that they do their yearly inventory, and they're very careful to make sure that they are aware that they need to be giving zakah, and they need to make sure that they do all of the inventory that they can to make sure that they know what they need to give zakah on. And then they would give the zakah, and they would give the money from that zakah that reaches like the amount of money that would be, that would equate to. They would give this in their zakah. And this is this is how they would pay it out. They would say, how much is this all worth, and then they would give the 2.5% from that at the end of that, if they were above the nisab, of course. Wallahu ta'ala. Also, there's a couple other conditions for the urud al-tijara that he doesn't mention here, and the other one is that this person got this thing, or like the thing that they're trading and selling, that they got this from a sense of buying, so that they actually like bought this or traded for it. Like they had to have actually had some type of trading when they got this item that they're selling. So if you were given something and then you wanted to sell it, this would not be counted as urud al-tijara. This would be because you were given this, and this is something that you were given, so there's no zakah on it. Even if you came up with the intention, oh, I was given this car, I'm going to try to sell it, Like this doesn't break the fact that it was a gift, and it's not urud al-tijara. It needs to be something that was acquired by some type of transaction of you giving or trading or something, like or not where you're giving, but like it's a buying, selling, or a trading transaction. And then also, when that buying and selling, trading transaction happens, it also needs to have happened when this person was intending to do some type of trading with it. So when he was buying and selling, he had the intention to do to flip it. Like if he was buying a car and he was intending to flip it, then he has the intention when he was buying the car. But if he had the intention when he was buying the car to get a car for himself, and he's not intending to go and sell it, then in this case it wouldn't carry that. Even if he did later say, oh, I'm going to sell it, this doesn't mean that's now tijara, and that it would take that, because he didn't, at the time when he acquired it, he didn't have the intention of selling it. So this is important also to know, because sometimes people have like antiques maybe that they have from way back, and they have no intention to sell it, or they didn't get it with the intention necessarily to sell it and come up and flip, but they just like collecting things. But if they had the intention, then in this case this would be something that then it would be like they had the intention to sell it and whatnot, and they bought it with the intention that they're going to sell it way down the line, then this would be something that there would be tijara in. Wallahu ta'ala. There would be that zakat in. So the next chapter he's going to go into, I'm going to basically read it here, and I'll read it in English just because it's something that we can look back, and of course you have the link to the document here, and you can look back and read it if you ever need to go through it. But this is something that it applies to some people, but it doesn't necessarily apply to most people in America. Which is, he talks about the nisab for each type. And so the first couple ones he's going to talk about the nisab for when it comes to camels and when it comes to cows. So the first one, he says, chapter for camels. He says the first nisab is for 5 camels, which is 1 sheep. So if someone has 5 camels, then they have 1 sheep that's due on that with the other conditions that were previously mentioned. And for 10 camels, then 2 sheep. And of course this is not a camel, because if someone was to take a full camel from their 10, this would be hard. But 2 sheep is easier. So they could just buy 2 sheep and then do that for it. And then for 15 camels would be 3 sheep. And for 20 camels, it'd be 4 sheep. And for 25, it would be one year old female camel. And so this is where it comes into the first bit of camels. And anything between this, if someone had 6 camels, then they just pay for the 5 camels. Until they reach the 10 camels, then they would pay for the 10 camels. This is like a tier. So every time they hit the tier, then they would pay for only what is at that tier. They don't pay in for in between. So there's no making up between this. There's a gap between 10 and 15, yes. There's a gap between 15 and 20. There's a gap between 20 and 25. Until they hit that next level, they pay for the 20. And this is how it goes. And so, and also for 36 camels, he would pay out one 2-year-old female camel. Of course, a 2-year-old female camel is more expensive than a 36-year-old than a 1-year-old camel, and there's more quality to it. And he also says for 46, one 3-year-old camel, and for 61, one 4-year-old camel, and for 76 camels, then two 2-year-old female camels. And for 91 camels, then it would be two 3-year-old female camels. And then for 121 camels, it would be three 2-year-old female camels. And then for 40 after that, for each 40 after that, one 2-year-old female camel, and for every 50, one 3-year-old female camel. And so if it was a mix and match, you can mix and match after that. So if you had like 100, or if you had like 120, then you would go with the mix that would actually that it would make. And so you just do the math after that to go for each one of that for every 40 or 50. And this is the basics here. And of course, this where do all these numbers come from? They come from the letter that Abu Bakr he wrote a letter when it comes to Zakah. And he wrote a very detailed letter when it comes to these things. And he talked about this. And he basically said all of these things for the camels, how much and what type of camel is for each one of these. And of course, there's certain names for each one of these camels in Arabic, such as bint al-Lubun and also Hiqqa. And so there's these different names that are given for the each of these camels that you can find in the hadiths and in the Arabic of this. But I translated the meaning for these to make it easier for the English reader. And so the next chapter, which is for cows, and the cows is pretty simple. When it comes to cows, he says the first of the nisab for cows is 30, which obligates one 1-year-old bull. So when someone has 30 cows, then they give one 1-year-old bull. And so this is the first 30. And until they reach 40, then if they reach 40, then it's one 2-year-old heifer. And then it goes on and so on and so forth like that. So this is so you would take so if it's 40, then it'd be one 2-year-old heifer. And so what if you had 70? That would be 30 and 40. So you'd give one of this and one of that. And then if you were to have 80, then you would give one of this and one of that. No, you'd give the two 2-year-old heifers because it's 40 and 40. And so you just do the math in that way, and whatever it falls into between the 30 and 40, then you would do the math accordingly. And so the next chapter, he talks about sheep. And he says for sheep, the first nisab is for sheep is 40, which obligates one 1-year-old sheep or a 2-year-old goat. So a 1-year-old sheep is about the equivalent of a 2-year-old goat, and these are for the first 40 sheep. And then for 121, so between 40 and 121, this is all that one sheep or a 2-year-old goat. And then for 121, if they're over that, then there's 2 of those. And for 201, then there's 3 of those. And for 400, and for 400 of these, then there would be 4 of those. And this is and as I mentioned, the sheep and the goats are the same. I put here the first nisab for sheep, but this would also go for someone if someone's a goat herder. This would also go for them as well. And of course, they have a mix of goat and sheep. Then each one of these has an individual one for that. And then for each 100 after that, 1 of those. So each 100, so if they have 500, they would do 5. And then if they had 600, then they would do 6. Or 625, they would do 6. And so on and so forth, according to each 100. And then also he gives another chapter here, which is what if you have someone that's mixed their herds? They have a mixed herd between they have a couple people that are all in the same pasture and they mix their herds. What is their ruling for that? And he says, well, khalitani yuzakkiyani zakat al-wahid. And so he says the khalitan, which is the people who are mixed, then they would give the zakat for someone that is 1. If they've mixed, then their zakat is 1. So if they have, this person has 30 and this person has 20, if they put it together, okay, then they have zakat for 50. And they would look at that. But this 30, if they say it's sheep, he would have no zakat. And this 20, he has no zakat. But if you were to put it together, then they all have one sheep that needs to come out, and they split the price according to that. And so this is This is if they were mixed herd, then they'd do this. And he says with 7 conditions, and he mentions them here. We'll go over this, and this will probably be where we end up today. And he says here, if they're the first of them, إذا كان المراح واحد, and that this is if their pen or their grazing place where they go out and or no, like where they come back to. The marah is where they come back to, the place of return. If their pen is shared, as well as their masrah wahidan, and also if the place where they go and they graze is or like the way to their grazing is one, and also their grazing pasture is one, and also he says here their stud, like the one that basically will get all the females pregnant, is one, or like it's the one thing, and also mashrab wahid, that they all drink from the same place, and the place, the milker, and the place of milking. The milker is not the this is a weaker view. So like a lot of the Shafi'i, the strong view in the Shafi'i madhab is that it's actually that they have one, like there would be one person who is they would have the same person that is what would you call it, you call it like the pasture, like the person who is out there watching the sheep and whatnot. I'm totally forgetting the name for that, but you call it the rai. But the person, the shepherd, that's what you would say, like the shepherd, or like what is like that. If it's the same one, then this would be the one that is. If they have the same shepherd, then this would be the one that would count as all of this is one. Even if they mix in whoever is the shepherd, and they have different shepherds that take turns and whatnot, all of this is the same. If it's just one shepherd that goes over the whole flock, even though the flock is mixed between this person's flock and this person's flock, and this would all be considered one if all of these conditions were made, and then it would get the zakah of one. So if it was, if this was something that was separated, and there, say it was 30 and 20. If they were separated and they had a different place that they would go, and one of these conditions were missing, but they came back to the same place, say, but they went out to different places, or they go out to the same place, but they come back to different places, then in this case, these are separate flocks that would not be the same way. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
فلذلك فادع واستقم كما أمرت ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب وأمرت لأعدل بينكم الله ربنا وربكم لنا أعمالنا ولكم أعمالكم لا حجة بيننا وبينكم الله يجمع بيننا وإليه المصير.